Joining me now to shed some light on the political and fiscal issues at the Ontario Legislature is Jay Goldberg, Interim Ontario Director with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and David Clement, North American Affairs Manager with the Consumer Choice Centre. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to diving right into this discussion of all things politics and money and all sorts of things in Ontario. So why don't we start with maybe you, Jay? Could you give us an indication of what is the fiscal health of Ontario as it stands right now?
Well, the fiscal health of Ontario as it stands right now is not very good. As you mentioned in the fall economic update, the finance minister surprised us. We're seeing a higher deficit. It's $21.5 billion, and that's over $5 billion higher than last year. And of course, that was the year of lockdowns and shutdowns in the beginning of COVID and all those extra spending programs. So our deficit is actually up. Our spending is way up. Spending is up in every sector, not just healthcare, but everywhere. Education, justice, children's services, literally every sector spending is up. And we haven't seen any of the tax cuts that the government's promised us actually implemented. You mentioned the gas tax cut. We have a promise to keep a promise, but we haven't actually seen the follow through yet. Mm-hmm. So we've got high deficits, high spending, and not much on the tax side to be happy about.
And just so that I understand, is obviously there's a lot of discussion now about inflation, that we see inflation going up. Has this deficit kept up with the rate of inflation? Is it higher or is it lower?
The deficit is higher than the rate of inflation. We're going up $5 billion compared to last year. So the progressive conservatives are really getting ready to spend in advance of the next election.
Okay, David, there are some grim numbers that Jay just shared with us. I assume you read and you watched the fall economic update. Was there anything that surprised you there? Are you concerned with some of these numbers?
I am concerned because if we go back to the Wynne government, we're looking at the most indebted sub-sovereign unit in the world. And so that's the starting point. And so, yes, COVID is extraordinary circumstances. But at the end of the day, the chickens do come home to roost. And they are going to be left with, let's say they win another majority government, they are going to be left with some serious budget constraints. And so I think it would be far better suited from a financial position for them to start to explain to Ontarian taxpayers what their strategy is, rather than playing this game of hide the ball, where maybe if they win again, we'll see fiscal conservatism win the day, and in their second mandate, they'll get their house in order. It's a worrying sign because this can only go on for so long. And also couple this with what you mentioned in regards to inflation. I mean, if we're going to be raising taxes to cover deficits, that may be a necessary step. I don't like it. But if you're also going to do that alongside decade high or 2-decade high inflation, people are going to be getting punched in the face essentially from two sources, inflation and taxation. And I mean, that is just a really worrying possibility if you're a taxpayer in Ontario.